Hi, today I thought we'd spend a few minutes and talk about NuTone Service Manuals. The idea for this video came from a fellow named Marty. Marty has a long story that has to do with the service manual, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. So NuTone was always really good about giving service centers and publishing service manuals for all of the models of intercom systems that they ever made. Originally, they used a company called Sam's Photofax, and anybody who's in the repair business knows Sam Photofax. I don't think they're around any longer. I'm not sure how long they were around, but they were sort of a company that manufacturers could go to, and they would help produce service manuals for that company's products and under that company's name, NuTone in this case, or also under the Sam's Photofax names. And I think they would also be responsible for distributing the manuals to the dealers and those sort of things. NuTone only used them for a few years. I actually have a really early administrative bulletin that NuTone sent out. I think it's from 1960 or something like that. They talk about how they're going to sort of move away from using Sam's Photofax because it took too long for them to produce and send out manuals, and they wanted their service centers to have manuals actually before new products were introduced, so the service centers would be familiar with them and be prepared in case someone called. So after a short amount of time, probably by the time you get to the mid-1960s, no more Sam's Photofax. All manuals came directly from NuTone, and as far as I know, these were all designed in-house by the engineers or the manual department that worked on the different models of intercom systems. And there aren't only just service manuals for intercoms, there are service manuals for all things that are electronic. There are also other types of service manuals for other more complex products. Say for instance the built-in food center line, there's actually a service manual that shows how to work on the power unit that goes in the counter and those sort of things. So NuTone was always really good about service manuals, and they supported their service centers by making sure we had the technical information that we needed. I chose 4 manuals out of the more than 100 manuals I probably have that sort of represent the different eras of NuTone intercom design. And here we have a manual for the model 2015-2016, and this manual, I don't know if there's a date on it or not, probably not, but this would have come out around 1960 when this model was brand new, and it would have been sent out to all NuTone service centers and dealers probably, and anybody else who was interested in it. And then here we have a manual. This is for a 2540, and this manual was printed, well, this one says it was printed in 1977, but that's probably when it was reprinted. This would have been printed when this model was introduced, which would have been in the late 1960s. And then we have the 4006, this is from 1986, and then we have the 5006, which would have been from about 1989, 1990. So this represents sort of 4 different generations of intercom designs with 4 different types of manuals. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at this one, and then we'll compare it to what came afterwards. So here we have the manual for the 2015-2016 NuTone Service Manual, Madison and Red Banks Road, Cincinnati, 27. None of this 5-digit zip code stuff. And inside, it's very simple. You have a checkout procedure, just assembly instructions, some very rudimentary troubleshooting. I believe it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 suggestions of problems and suggested solutions for them, and things that the service technician, that would be me, could check to see what was going on. Not super detailed, but one of the things you're going to notice is as systems became more complex in their designs, the service manuals were more complicated also. So we have that, and then we have basically a copy of the installation instructions, because this was still a relatively new idea back in those days, and perhaps the service center who was going to be working on one of these, maybe they didn't do installations and they weren't that familiar with it, so that would sort of get them up to speed. Here we have some photographs with a legend around it showing where different components are located on the top of the chassis and underneath the chassis. And then we have the alignment instructions for the AM and FM tuner, which is all of that. More component location drawings, some resistance readings for the vacuum tubes. It shows you how you restring the tuner string, something nobody really likes to do. You have a parts list, of course, and then you have this really nice 2-page fold-out schematic, which gives you a lot of component information. It gives you voltages. It's everything that a good technician would need to be able to understand and work on the set. But you have to realize this is it's 10 pages plus the schematic. That's all that it is. It's just 10 pages long. If we go up to the 2540, it's very similar in design. We have a checkout procedure, we have disassembly, we have operation and bench service, some troubleshooting. The troubleshooting is actually, in this case, it's only 4 suggestions of symptoms and suggested things that you can check. It's very straightforward. We have the AM and FM alignment pages, more photographs with legends to show where components are located. Photographs of the back side of the board, because now it's all through-hole, single-sided, solid-state design, no more vacuum tubes, so you need to know which points on the solder side of the board you're dealing with. We have some information about how the switching operates on the master station for the intercom controls. A parts list, which is very brief, but there is another page here. They hide it. And here we have a really nice 3-page fold-out schematic. It's got the dial cord winding instructions here, switch block assembly down here. So it's a very good service manual. It tells you everything that you need. You still have voltages throughout the schematic, which makes the service guy's life easier when you're troubleshooting something. So it's a comprehensive enough service manual that a good experienced technician should be able to fix the set. From there we go, oh, and I forgot. So how many pages is this one? Well, this one grew just a little bit. Oh wait, no it didn't. It's still only 10 pages plus the fold-out schematic. So still fairly small. Now we jump up to 1986. And in 1986, things got more complicated. And how did they get more complicated? Well, the 4006 came out. Now the 4006 would have been the second model in the modern era of NuTone intercoms. The modern era began in 1984 with the 3003, and it left behind all of the previous designs and they started over again. And this service manual is very different than the last two. Not only is it a whopping 80 pages long, none of this 10-page stuff, you have a proper table of contents and you have a lot of information. Here we still have how to remove the master station. Here we have servicing the master station. It gives you the basic information of the equipment that you might need to work on it. And then we have, my favorite part, theory of operation. And in the theory of operation, it goes through each portion of the master station and gives you a description of how it fundamentally works. And here we have the FM section, the AM section, power supply amplifier, the cassette. And in the cassette heading, we have the power supply for the cassette, the record mode for the cassette, playback mode here. Then we have music, message, chime, and audio power supply with descriptions here and more here. We have the AM, FM, audio power, AM, FM, audio power continued, here, phono and tape audio processing. So you can go through this and you can read how each little portion of a 4006 master station, how it actually operates. And it gives you a very detailed descriptions of what happens when that section is actually doing something. The reason that they give us this kind of information is because the 4006 from a design point of view is a very sophisticated design, say compared to the model 2015, 2016. Really the way you can kind of look at this is a model like this is really an AM FM radio with a little bit of intercom added in. It's mostly radio related. It's only a little bit intercom. If you can understand and you know how to work on a tube-based AM FM radio, you can fix a 2015, 2016 because you've got the skills and experience and knowledge to do that. When you move into a model like the 4006, this is a very complex solid-state design. Now, complex as in discrete components when it was designed in the early and mid-1980s, not maybe complex in today's world with microcontrollers and microprocessors, but complex nevertheless. And that's why they give you this type of service manual, so it explains to you what happens when you're operating the system, and electrically and electronically how it actually operates. And you can see there's just page after page after page after page of this kind of information. And then you do have a section, you have problem areas. So this is problem area troubleshooting for the cassette, and the cassette continues on. Then we have the tuner and display troubleshooting, and then we have the system audio, and then we have more system audio, We have field troubleshooting for problems that could occur with the installation at someone's house. Here we have intercom control, one of the most important sections, because 4006s, when they have intercom related problems, can be complicated to figure out because there's lots of interactions between different boards, and it takes you through different things. For instance, here's a good example. So the problem could be no door talk from master, push door talk at master during measurement check. So they give you 4 different things that you can check, what the correct results for those measurements should be, and then replace or repair, and suggestions as to which components might be related to this particular problem. For instance, it could be if voltage measures approximately 12 volts DC, replace master PC board or resistor 3, diode 1, switch 2, section 2, and associated components. If voltage is 0 volts DC, replace control board PC. And then another option is control PC board or IC9 and associated components. And this is where it gets a little tricky, because for instance, with this suggestion as to what to replace or repair, it's not telling you precisely what to do. It's telling you a general area that it could be. So it could be IC9 on the control PC board, or some of IC9's associated components. Associated components are transistors, diodes, resistors, things like that. So it could be IC9, could be the associated components. It also could be all of that. So you have to be able to understand how to go through and troubleshoot it to find out. So we keep going, we have more areas, and then here we have voltage charts. Voltage charts are important. When we go back to the 2015, 2016, you have the voltages that you need to measure on the schematic, because it's really the voltages primarily for the pins of the vacuum tubes, and a little bit down here for the primary power supplies. The rest of it you can figure out as you go. But when you have a set like the 4006, where you have dozens of integrated circuits with different voltages, and you have many transistors, you have to have voltage charts to be able to go through and look for defective components. Sometimes when you're measuring voltages, you have to push the inside patio talk when you make this measurement, or push the end call button when you make that measurement. It's fairly complicated to do, especially if you're dealing with a board like the intercom control board, which has a lot of ICs and is a complex two-sided board. So we have all of these voltage charts, and they go on and on and on and on and on. And here we have no more photographs of circuit boards, but we have drawings of circuit boards. It shows how all of the components are placed on the board. It shows all their identification numbers. So if you haven't worked on a set like this before, it makes it a little easier than trying to read the little tiny numbers that are printed on the boards. Here we have the control board. This is the intercom control board. This is a fairly complex board, and since it's a two-sided board, which means there are foil traces on the top and different foil traces on the bottom, and there are many points, they're called vias, where the different sides are tied together through little pipes that go through the board. You have to be able to understand both sides of them. And this is a fairly complex board, and it is one of the more difficult boards in a 4006 to repair. And then we have the power supply board. We have about clock adjustment. So here we have PC audio gain chart. So it shows you the theory of how the signal is increased as it goes throughout the set before it plays through the speakers. More boards, And then we have our replacement parts list. And here, fortunately, it's a really good parts list where it's divided up by different sections of the design: cassette PC board, power amplifier board, switch board, control board assembly, and they give you the number for the complete board and then all of the part numbers for the individual components throughout. Now, none of this is available to buy from NuTone anymore. You have to source it on your own if you're going to work on something like this. But fortunately, not only do they give you the NuTone part numbers, but they also give you, like, this is a transistor, and they give you the actual transistor number, which is a 2SC945R. And that way you can source them on their own. One of the things you have to know about older service manuals are sometimes part numbers that were very common in, say, 1986, not so much used today. They've been superseded by other part numbers, so you kind of have to know that. But you go through all of this, and they show you all the replacement parts, and it goes on and on. And here's a nice exploded view diagram of all of the parts of a 4006 and kind of how they would come apart if it exploded from the center. The one thing that's not in this manual, which was a separate addendum, was the actual fold-out schematic for the system, because they didn't put that in the book any longer. So that's a very comprehensive 80-page service manual, and we'll just briefly look at the 5006 manual, because 5006 is probably at least 10 times more complicated than a 4006 is. So you have some troubleshooting, you have general system description. Since this is a selective call system and it's a fully digitalized system, how the remote stations all interact with each other and with the master station, and so on and so on. There's a lot of block diagrams which, once you understand them, are very helpful in figuring out problems. And these are this is a master station block diagram, and as you can see, for those who don't do this all the time, this might as well be Chinese, because you have no idea what this actually means. And it's very complicated as you go through it. It has very good circuit descriptions, and for the most part, every time there's a circuit description, there's the schematic for that small section that has to do with this, so it's easier to deal with than the big giant multi-page fold-out schematic. And it goes on and on and on and on. One of the things, and so I'll show you this in the back. We're back to fold-out schematics. I think there's 2 or 3 pages of them. So here's one. This is the Intercom interconnect diagram, how all the boards of a 5006 connect together. Here's the exploded view. This is a control board PC schematic. Here we have the other side, 2 of the control board PC schematic. Here we have the actual front and back sides of the double-sided board. Here we have the main PC board schematic. And here we have pictures of that board, both sides. Here we have the keyboard display and the main PC board schematic there. So it just goes on and on and on. This is also a very good and a very comprehensive service manual that, if you understand what you're looking at, will allow you to repair an IM5006. Now, one of the things that's interesting, and I'll see if I can find it here really quick. So here's what I was looking for. It's under the troubleshooting. The success of component level repair will depend largely on the experience of the technician and tools available to him or her. The technician must be familiar with surface mounted components and proper soldering techniques required for these components. The technician should also be familiar with the schematics and the circuit descriptions contained within this manual. It is assumed throughout this manual that the technician is informed on the proper use of a multimeter and oscilloscope. Before undertaking component level repair, the technician should be advised that NuTone does not supply board level components for the IM5006. However, individual PC boards are available, except they aren't any longer. So because of the complexity of this, and because of the huge number of different types of components used in the 5006, you can barter parts for it. If you were going to troubleshoot this and do component level repair, you are on your own. How does this all play into my phone conversation with Marty? Well, let me tell you a little bit about Marty. Marty lives in Virginia, and Marty has a NuTone IM4006. and it was installed somewhere between like 1988 and 1989, and he's only been in the house for a few years, and recently it started to develop some problems. They were sort of ordinary 4006 related problems that I hear about from people every day. Marty was determined that he was going to fix it himself, and he searched around online and he found some place that he could order and buy a NuTone IM4006 service manual. This actual one just like this. When Marty got the manual, first he was really sort of daunted at the fact that it was 80 pages long. And also, he said, after struggling through it, was the impression I got, he said he couldn't find the problems that his system were having. And he said, really, this wasn't any help to him at all. Then he started to look around and he got a hold of us, and in the end, I think he's going to send us his 4006 and we're going to repair it for him. But what I wanted to talk about is these are professional service manuals. These are not consumer service manuals, and these are not step-by-step how to fix things service manuals. These are professional service manuals that were written for, frankly, someone like me, someone who has knowledge and experience and equipment in working on component level electronics. What you won't find in here, for the most part, is if you have problem A, do the following. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do this other thing. Step 3, replace this part. Step 4, put it back together, cross your fingers, and hope that it works. These aren't that type of manual. You're not going to find a step-by-step in any NuTone manual. Not really. There may be a little bit here and there that talks about how to figure out if you have a shorted wire or some really basic fundamental thing, but for the most part, you're not going to find the answers in something like this. In the past, NuTone did try to produce what they called troubleshooting guides. The most infamous NuTone troubleshooting guide was the one they put out for the NuTone IM806, because the 806 was plagued with problems and it was very complicated. It was the first really truly complicated electronic intercom that NuTone ever made, and because of all the problems and because of all the pushback from dealers and service centers, they were trying to push back against the wave of complaints, and they came out with a troubleshooting guide. Unfortunately, like most troubleshooting guides, I think in the 30 years I've been doing this, I found an answer in it maybe once, because most of the problems that you have don't show up in a troubleshooting guide. They're real world problems that have to be dealt with through experience and troubleshooting. The other thing about service manuals like this go back to a saying that I use here at the shop all the time, which is time changes everything. And what that means is, as equipment continues to get older and older, you start to see new and different problems with it that you never sometimes saw before. The thing about the information in here, about the circuit descriptions and so forth, are when it's describing how the circuit works, and then you go to the troubleshooting section that says, oh, here's the problem I'm experiencing, here are things I should check, this is what it should be, and this is what I should think about doing to resolve the problem. This was written when the 4006, was brand new. This was written probably before the very first ones were let out into the real world. So these problems and what you do to check them and what the possible problems would be are all related to when a system is still relatively brand new. So if you have a 4006 and it's only 3 or 4 years old and you're experiencing one of these problems that's in this section, this is probably pretty valid. But if you have a 4006 that was installed in 1986, that 4006 is now 33 years old. Everything changes in equipment that's 33 years old. A lot of what you read here may not apply any longer because the whole system has aged a great deal in 33 years. You have many parts of many circuits that are 33 years old, and you have components that are wearing out, you have components that are stressed or partially failed because of the components that are failing due to age, and it's this snowball effect where you have all of these little things that are basically out of whack. It affects how everything operates. You're not going to find that answer in a book like this, as comprehensive and as good as this is. You have to understand the kinds of things that happen to systems systems when they're 33 years old. Even if this was written with a how to do it, it would be a how to do it or how to fix it for when it was 2 or 3 years old, not for when it was 33 years old. So while this is a good reference guide to get you up to speed on the fundamental design and the circuitry in a 4006, it's not going to provide the answers to you. If you understand the circuit descriptions, it will give you some clues as to where you might look, but it's not going to give you a step-by-step answer. And that's actually what Marty was looking for. I hope you found this interesting, and perhaps for some it will be helpful. If it is, and it does, give it a thumbs up on YouTube, because that always helps. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell, and click on the bell so you receive all notifications. And each time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.